video games and violence. Do those two subject matters tie in together, or is there another underlying factor in that whole discussion? I'm here to tell you that in my opinion, yes there is. I know that a lot of political figures, a lot of politicians usually go after these video game industries, these companies, when there is a shooting at a high school, a shooting at a middle school. They tend to root cause these these activities to video games, and I feel that is very biased. I feel that it is more based on the parenting, the level of teaching that goes on in the household. That is what I think is more important than the type of video game a child is playing. I've been around video games for as long as I can remember. I've been playing them since I was around 6 years old, and my parents' first video game that they got me was actually a very violent video game. The reason that I am not violent whatsoever these days is because of the type of discipline my parents instilled in me. They taught me what's right and what's wrong. And this, I feel like, is the most important thing a child could receive. When playing a violent video game, parents need to make sure that they are instilling some kind of discipline in their kids and showing them that this is just virtual reality and should not be applied to reality. There's different kinds of kids out there, of course, and 8-year-old kid coming from a very violent household while also playing a very violent video game will tend to be more violent out in the real world. The statistics have shown that compared to a kid that has great discipline in the household, that has a lot of love and care in their household, while also playing that same violent video game, tend to be less violent just because they are aware of what is real and what is not. Now, the video game industry is very large. It's a $17 billion a year industry. And since its kind of boom, I would say, in around 1995, there has been a 49% decrease in violence when it comes to adolescents. I have a little chart to show that shows the blue line shows the type of the violence going down since that whole boom happened, and increase in revenue in the red line in video games. I feel like this is because this decrease, that 49% decrease, is because video games give kids a type of vent, a type of escape from the real world, like any of us adults need also. However, it is very important that parents monitor the amount of time these kids are playing these certain kind of video games. Parents need to be aware of what they are buying for their kids. The ESRB established a rating system. It goes from everyone, that's put on the box, everyone, which a video game is allowed for anyone to play, teen, which should only be played by around 13-year-olds and up, mature, which video games tend to be very bloody, very gory, should be played by 17 or older, and adult, which should only be played by probably 21-year-old adults only. Parents need to make sure that they are aware of these ratings and know what they are purchasing for their kids. A child cannot go into a store and buy an M-rated game if he or she is only 12 years old. They will not be able to buy that video game. They will be asked to put it back by the retailer. So it's up to the parents to make sure that they are also aware of what they're buying their kids. Again, parents need to be in control of what they are buying for their kids. Parents need to set aside a certain amount of time that their kids should be playing video games. A professor in Iowa State suggested a max of 1 to 2 hours a child should play a video game. The rest of the time should be physical activity, interaction with different kids, to make sure that there's no socially awkward situations with that child. Again, parental control. Parents can control the amount of time on these new video game systems, how long their kids can play. There's different kinds of software to monitor this kind of the type of games they're playing, as well as the amount of time. And also, parents need to be aware that if their kids are playing excess amount of games and very long hours throughout the day, that therapy and counseling can also be another way to solve a problem, because that's when kids tend to put themselves into the virtual world. When they're playing around 6 hours, they get a kind of euphoric feeling, different kind of high. So parents need to be aware that if their kids are playing excess amount of video games and excess amount of hours, that therapy and counseling will also be necessary depending on the type of video games they play, if they are very violent. Um, so, in conclusion, I feel like video games should not be singled out whether or not a kid is socially different than anybody else, whether a kid is more socially violent towards other people, is more based on the type of teachings they get from their parents. Parents are there to help their kids. They're motivate. The biggest motivation a kid could have. The way they teach will rub off on their children. The way, because kids always look up to their parents. That is the major issue I am trying to put here, is that it's on the parents' responsibility to make sure they monitor what their kids are playing, the amount of time they're playing, and also what kind of games they're playing. This is very crucial. Kids need social interaction more than they need video games. So, in conclusion, video games, sure, they are violent and they may contribute a little bit to the violence if a child is prone to violence, but it's more on the parents and how they are brought up that will determine if a child is fun and loving versus just mean and a bully.